Looks like we're ready to go. Okay, Shin. We're going to start off with the Gemara in Baba Kama. Isn't that exciting? Everyone wants to learn Baba Kama, right? So the Mishnah in Baba Kama, the first Mishnah in Baba Kama lists the Arba Avos Nazikin. So Avos are principles, right? Like there are Avos Malachos on Shabbat. There are Avos. The Gemara actually over here goes through the different areas in Halacha that have Avos. And there's also Toldos. So literally that means fathers and generations that are generated from the Avos. But in the conceptual sense, it means principles and the consequences of those principles. So there are four primary categories, principal categories of types of damages that can be inflicted. And what are those four categories? Hashur, the ox; Habor, the pit; Hamaveh. That term Maveh, it's Machokas Rav and Shmuel, what that term means. Fine, but we'll just put that on the side for a moment. The heather and the burning or fire. Okay, so the Gemara is discussing over here on the next page. This is Beis Amud Beis, discussing the term Maveh. So what does Maveh mean? So says the Gemara. As we said, there are two opinions. Rav actually holds that term is referring to Adam Hamazik, meaning just personal injury. If a person injures someone else, either intentionally or unintentionally. But the primary line of the Gemara seems to be that Maveh is a euphemism for what's called Shane, the tooth. So what is Shane? So the Gemara says, well, Shane means like when you have an animal and it bites someone, like your cat bites the neighbor, and you have to pay for the damage that it caused. So says the Gemara, no, Shane is not literally Shane. Shane is a category, right? Whereas the Gemara says, Neshicha tolda desheinu. Neshicha, if your animal bites someone, that should be a tolda, that should be one of the offspring, so to speak, of the principle of Shane. So says the Gemara, no, Shane is not literally Shane. In fact, if an animal bites someone, that's a different category in of itself. If an animal aggressively attacks another animal or a human being, that's the first one. That's called shur. Shur is talking about an animal that aggressively attacks another person. And there's a whole other category of laws that governs that. We know there's a distinction between a tam and a muad. If you have a domesticated animal, right? Domesticated animals don't typically harm other people. So if it harms someone, you only have to pay half, and only when it becomes a muad, when it becomes demonstrably so that the animal is aggressive, then the owner has to take extra precautions and is liable for full damages. Shane is not biting. Shane is kol davar she'osa lahanasa, anything that the animal does for its own pleasure, And what's one? The Gemara brings several psukim to indicate this. One of the psukim that it brings is a pasuk from Malachim Aleph. What is the pasuk in Malachim Aleph talking about? This is talking about the prophecy of the house of Achav, the very evil king of the northern kingdom of Israel, about how the kingdom will be completely destroyed. This is in animals at all. Bear with me one. Talking about Yeravam. Hindi maybe Ra al Beis Yeravam. I'm going to bring evil onto the house of Yeravam. V'ichrati li Yeravam mashtin bakir, which is a very crass term, which literally means that which he urinates on the wall. Meaning even the animals I'm going to wipe out. Meaning not just the people, but also the animals. Atzur v'azuv b'Yisrael. Ubi'arti Beis Yeravam, I'm going to destroy, I'm going to consume the house of Yeravam. Ka'asher yiva'er hagalal ad tumo. In the same way that the galal consumes until it's all completed. The galal is a very rare term to describe teeth. Galal is the tooth. In the same way that the tooth consumes until it's been completely consumed. That's where Chazal get this term Yiva'er, be'er, right? In fact, in the Torah, in Sefer Shemos, Parachaf Aleph, when it talks about this form of damage, that's where these halachas are introduced to us in Parashas Mishpatim. It says, be'er b'sdei acher, that the animal goes and consumes in someone else's field. So the owner of the animal has to pay back for whatever has been consumed. the idea of shane is not literally shane, because as we said, there are certain forms of damage that can be done with the tooth that are not in that category. If the animal bites, for example, which you would think shane means, that's actually not in the category of shane. Shane is talking about consumption, because the tooth is the primary tool of consumption. What we're talking about is consuming in the context of digestion, meaning the animal, or in this case, as we'll see, the person is consuming in order to digest the thing. It's consuming it for its own purposes. Kasher yivaer hagalal ad tumo. In the same way that you take a plate, you take all the contents of the plate, you consume it. So I'm going to consume the entire house. The entire house of your oven will be consumed. Right? The idea of shin, the shin, os shin, Rav Kook says, is all honing in on the theme of shane in this context. The theme of shane, in the sense that shane is the beginnings of the process of digestion. It's like they teach you in in fifth grade biology. When does digestion start? It doesn't start in the stomach. Doesn't start in the intestines. It starts in the mouth. Right. The first stage of digestion is you start chewing the thing. It's very important. Right. And in fact, there are some animals that they have to chew it more than once. Right. Chewing is the beginning. Right. Chewing is is the beginning of digestion. So the idea of shane is the ability to is the consuming of the thing in order to make use of it. And similar to what we said in os kuf, that there's the kuf of purity and then there's the kuf of impurity. There's copying in a good sense and there's copying in a negative sense. There's consumption in a positive sense and there's consumption in a negative sense. And he's got to break that down. So says Rav Kook in the beginning of the of those. Mazkir hu b'toaro b'shmo es hashen. The shin, in its name and in the way that it looks, it reminds us of the shane, the tooth. Right? It's like multiple teeth that are coming out of the letter. Right? It's this three-pronged letter. Hakliya machshir es hachayim lemif'alam v'havayatam. It is the tool that allows all life to act out any of its actions. Dok bekechi v'tishkach benagari. If you look, right, the nagari, the nagar is like the carpenter that needs to like cut into wood. I believe this is the poetic reference that he's saying. The nagar is like the carpenter that takes wood and beats away at it with sharp instruments in order to make something out of it. Ha'ikul harishon, the beginnings of digestion. Hatsoed lahavi et koach hachayim el hayitzur pnima. The purpose of digestion is in order to allow the life force of the thing to be internalized. Meaning there's life force in this piece of broccoli, but I can't like hold it in my hand and get the life, suck the life force through my hand. It has to go through a process in order for me to suck the life force out of it. And the beginnings of that process is the shane. The shane symbolizes that process of being able to get the life out of the thing. Shemimenu hakochos hapratim mista'afim. That is what is required for all the specific points of life, meaning all creatures, to get their life force and to spread out. V'holchim v'nimshachim, in order to maintain their progression. Gam hi hashen ha'ochelet. It is the shane that eats, hamechaleh, that destroys. Achla umedaka. Medaka is like the term that the Torah uses in the Egel Hazav when Moshe comes down from the mountain. It says that he grinds up the egel, dak la'afar, like to grind up something into small pieces is daka. So that's literally and figuratively what the shane does. It grinds up the thing. Hamechabelet v'horeset, and also has a manifestation of destruction. Mechabelet v'horeset. Mezuyan, excuse me, mezuyanahi b'chol hatzurot havayatiyot haklaliot. The shane, or the shin, this letter is armed. Mezuyana, it is armed with all of the diversity of forces, as he's going to explain. What's the diversity of forces? So in Rav Kook's conception, the shin, if you look at it, it's made up of 3 letters. Which 3 letters? They're all 3 letters that come together at the base, but they're bound together. Zayin, Yud, and it's a Vav, right? I mean, I guess it's the nun if you took the base, but he's saying that there's these three letters that they all come together at the bottom, like they're being held together at the bottom. So you have a yud on the right side, a vav in the center, and then a zayin on the on the left hand side. So hayud, what does that represent? Haydiali hamispari. That's what we've always right. We said that this is what the yud symbolizes. It represents the ideal in its quantitative form, the ability for quantity, the maximum amount of quantity of the thing to be expressed. Tochen haribui, content of multiplicity. Haitrabut va'itgadlut hakamutit, the growing in the sense of quantity. Hakshurim biyasod ha'ichuti, which is tied to the foundations of quality. Remember, we've talked about this, the quantity versus quality thing. The quality, which is embodied in the osvav, which is going to get to, that's the next letter over, right? The middle letter. Hamakeh the omer gedol, which is the instrument that strikes and tells the thing to grow. This is a reference back to osvav. That vav, the shape of the vav looks like a staff. It looks like a stick. So this is a reference to the Midrash. It says that every creature in the world, not just every creature, but even every blade of grass has an angel that takes a stick and strikes it and tells it to grow. Right. So the vav is the staff that's striking the creation and urging it to grow. So that's the vav. Nimshachu behilo hagadol letzorach istafut hakachot habonim ha'asotrim lemiflagoteim, which draws down the potential for all these stafuyot, all the different branches of life. It gives them the ability habonim to be builders, v'hasotrim, and also to unbuild, right, to demolish lemiflagoteim, for all their diverse expressions. Havav moshechu et meshach hachayim. The vav draws down the potential of life. El kol asderot, for all of the different pathways of life. Lefi chiluf ma'utioteim, according to the essence of the creature. Begodel ubakotan, begodel ubakotan, whether they are big or small life forms. Bahaglama ubetzior, in their formation and I'm not sure the difference between haglama and sior, in their formation, and perhaps sior is like a more fine-tuned expression, like almost as if you're drawing very delicate forms on the thing. Ubedliga ubeitiyut, in their way that they can jump, meaning make a fast progression, ubeitiyut, and also in a slow progression. Umismol, in the final letter, the zayin, shomer et hamishmeret, it guards, it stands guard, which is what we said in Os Zion in the beginning. Zion referring to a weapon. It's the force that comes to guard all of the life forces. So this is it's very matim that the shein represents the beginnings of the process that the thing needs to consume. It needs to literally eat and draw life from the thing in order to continue surviving. So it has the Zion over there to protect it. I remember learning, I think I read this in Ian McGilchrist's book. He talks about, yes, this wasn't Ian McGilchrist's book. He talks, he's a Scottish neuroscientist, wrote a very interesting book about the bicameral nature of the brain. He said that animals, they tend to have the eyes not like human faces where both eyes are looking forward, but eyes on either side of the head, right? So why is that? Because it tends to be that one eye will be able to focus in, zoom in on whatever activity it's doing, while the other eye will be able to look around and make sure it's not being attacked. Because if you're focused too much on eating your lunch, you're going to become someone's lunch. Yeah. So you need to be able to focus on both those things at the same time. So it's like, right. So just thematically, you have the ability to create multiplicity in quantity, and you have the ability to draw down life in the qualitative sense, and you also have the Zion that's standing watch to make sure that you could be protected and stable while all that is going on. So lochem u'mahares, it is able to be a warrior, it is able to destroy if necessary, et kol mechalel mahares ha'omed le'umato, any destructive force that comes toward it, keshu lakuach miyasod hatzedek v'hanoam ha'elohi. After it feels like almost comfortable with itself, it founded and rooted in the pleasant divine justice. Umechatet umishaber et kol tov ve'osher. It crunches down. Mechatet means to grind down into small pieces. Umishaber, and breaks. Et kol hatov ve'osher, all good and happiness. Et kol yosher ve'ilui, all straightness and loftiness. Kishu shokea b'tehomot hasheker v'hadimyonot hamat'im. While it has the potential to sink down into the depths of lies and fantasies. The depths of lies and fantasies. So the Zion is specifically guarding against this possibility. And we'll get back to that in a minute. There you go. Yes, it guards against the conceptia. Yeah. The Sodama Tachtiti in the bottom yisod, in the bottom foundation of the shin, like referring to the bottom part of the letter itself. Harei hem mitachdim. All these disparate forces, the yud, the vav, and the zayin, they all come together. Right? There's a point on the bottom. They literally come together to a fine point. Ponim hem lematara yisodit shalabinyan hayoter tachtiti. They are all focused in on the building of the thing in its lowest manifestation, meaning in like the corporal sense. It doesn't stay in a lofty ethereal world. It comes to build in the finite and the material world. Ha'agbala hayoter zira, in the most constricted form possible. Shebishvil hashlama klalit, because for the purposes of the fulfillment of the klal, of the general, harehi muchrechet latzeit lapoal b'tzuroteh hashonot, because it understands that in order for there to be a klali hashlama, a general wholeness, meaning like a general wholeness of the cosmos, of the world, or the community, right? In order to attain this general wholeness, there needs to be a wholeness in every specific thing. Like meaning in all the members of this particular group. Excuse me. Because all of the specific points, all the pratim, they coalesce together to make the klal. The alkain bonehi et binyana b'chol gvanea, and through that it builds its structure with the full diversity of the structure. So ada begona betoch uponehi liyamin begam lismol. It's able to turn right and it's able to turn left, referring to the different forces that are expressed in the shin. Right, the left side being the Zion, and the right side being the vav and the yud. V'chol pa'al Hashem l'maneo, and all that God has created is for His own sake. So let's break this down for a little bit. The theme of the shin. So first of all, the first thing that struck me when I read this is that, I think we've mentioned this in different contexts, that the mitzvah of Torah study, as it appears in the Torah, never comes in the form of saying study Torah, like lilmod, right? Exactly. It comes in the form of v'shinantam levanecha. V'shinantam levanecha. Right? And there are many points to take away from there. The fact that it doesn't say you should learn, it says that you should teach it to your children. That's a separate point. But just the term that it uses to describe Talmud Torah is v'shinantam, which is the word shein, a noun, in the verb form. You should teeth it, right? V'shinantam, right? This is where the term, even in English idiom, we talk about to ruminate over something. To ruminate means to chew it over. That's literally what it means, right? The Gemara in Avodah Zarah makes a strong connection between, that's something else. It's between the eyes and the heart. I'm forgetting the source of this in Chazal. Chazal point out the 32 teeth, right? 32 is gematria lev, the heart. So just like the heart understands, so too the teeth digest. Meaning the process of digestion of the teeth is the same as the heart understanding. In the same manner that we digest things and are able to consume the life force contained within the food, so too the heart understands it, right? It processes the thing intellectually and is able to get the chiyus, the life force from the thing, right? So v'shinantam, it literally is saying that you chew the Torah, like you chew it. And we find later on in the Nevi'im that Torah is referred to as food in this way. The most famous, I think, is the pasuk in Mishlei, in Perek Ches, L'chu lachmu b'lachmi, come and eat my bread. Come and eat my bread. Very often, the pshat of a pasuk is not the literal translation. People often get confused between pshat and literal. Literal is not always pshat. Meaning, if you translate a pasuk literally, it's often not the pshat. Right? Like if you translate ayin tachas ayin in the Torah, an eye, right, literally means an eye for an eye, but that's not what the pasuk means. The pasuk means that you have to pay the financial equivalent of the eye that you damaged. So literal is not always the same as pshat. Sometimes the pshat, the simple understanding of the pasuk, is to understand it euphemistically. So similarly, in this parak in Mishlei, which we referenced several times in these discussions, because this is a very, very central parak in Mishlei. It's talking about wisdom and the nature of wisdom. I think we talked about it on Shabbat actually in the Pirkei Avot discussion. It's talking about the nature of wisdom. So wisdom is saying, here, come, I'm inviting you to eat my bread. It's not talking about bread that you buy at Teller over here. It's talking about the bread of wisdom. So it's literally vishinam tam. Like you have to chew it over. You have to chew it over in order so that you can extract the chiyus. It's not so apparent, the chiyus. Meaning, like the sefer in front of you, the content is not always readily accessible. You have to read it. That's like you take the first bite, so to speak, and then you chew it over, and you have to you got it right. And sometimes two chewers are better than one. If you have multiple people chewing it over, then it gets digested, right? It gets digested faster, right? So it's this chewing that allows the chiyus to be taken out. Now he emphasizes over here. He kind of goes back and forth between this. He says that one aspect of the shane of the eating, totally lost the place. One aspect of the shane is the ability, as he says, limshoch et koach hachayim, in order to take the force of life that's contained within the thing and be able to take it in and inculcate it. That's the positive form of shane. The negative form of shane is just this heres v'chabala. It's coming in to just destroy. Yivaer is the word to describe fire, right? Like it's fine, like by Moshe Rabbeinu. Right, the sneh is boer, right? It's on fire, right? And then ukal. It isn't being eaten because usually fire eats the thing that is on fire. Yeah, right. So the ba'er, the destruction, eats. But it's not eating in a positive sense of like sitting down to a nice meal. It's eating in the sense that the fire is consuming just destruction, just wanton destruction. So that's the negative form of shane. Negative form of shane is this lust, this taiva, which is why we discussed the Gemara in Baba Kama that shane and bi'er, right, and maver is very often brought in this negative context that it's just the impulse to destroy and consume. That's all it is. But the positive manifestation of the shane is that you identify that there's chiyus in this thing. You identify that there's life and potentiality in this thing, and you want to be able to access the life and potentiality. This is like the inverted or spiritualized form of the food chain. It's a very, very powerful idea that a person needs to orient their consumption with this intent in mind. That things that I consume in the world, I'm consuming because I identify that there's chiyus there that I can then use and express.
So are we talking about
and to the extent that a person has inculcated that kavana in their consumption, they can consume. That's a positive consuming. I want to read a very quick section. I'm sorry, I cut you off. Did you want to? This is just finishing the thought, and so right. So this is I'm reading from the Ramchal in the very last section of the Mesilas Yesharim in Erech Kedusha. The erech before Kedusha was precious. Precious is a person achieves a state where they do not partake of anything material unless they absolutely need it, right? Which is a very high level. A person has such discipline and self-control that they don't engage with physical things unless it's necessary, right? And that's very, very high level of discipline. You know? And Kedusha is the level after that. It's the level up. So he says, how could you, so he opens up with like an implied question. How could you go higher than precious? Precious is like, I don't touch anything unless I absolutely need it. Like, what could be higher than that? So he says, no, Kedusha is higher than that because precious is looking at the material world from the negative, meaning I'm backing off to the full extent that I can back off. But Kedusha is the next step. Kedusha is, okay, now that I've attained that discipline and I'm in complete self-control, now I can engage positively. I can engage positively.
Does that imply that you can't engage positively without getting to that level?
That you can't. It's not saying that you can't engage positively. It's saying that there's different levels of positivity. He uses very, very powerful language. He says, get to the ish kazeh, right? This type of person, right, who has attained kedusha. I'm going to skip off. I'm going to go back a few lines. Achakodosh hadavik tamid lelohav, the person who has cleaved on to his creator. V'nafsho misaleches bein hamuskalos, separate from our physical side. It's not that way. God obviously doesn't have that need, but it is lechem in the higher conceptual sense that there's a life force here that needs to be unleashed. That's what it is. It's lechem. It's lechem in the highest form of lechem. So too, a human being can also be like that. The private food that he consumes can be like God's lechem. It's being consumed being consumed because there's a chiyus there, there's life force that needs to be accessed. And that's how they related to the world. They related to the world. Every place I go, anything I interact with, I'm right. I need to shane the thing. I need to be vishinanta. I need to ruminate over that thing in order to access the wisdom, in order to access the chiyus rather, in that thing. Is the question you had still relevant?
So I'm getting to see a little bit clearer of a picture now that you did that last thing. So I was wondering, like, we're talking about the positive part of Shane is to consume, and we're talking about knowledge here. We're talking about life forces here, and we can apply it to anything. And if we access it properly, then we're doing it in the right way. But what is to consume things improperly? Is that like
consuming? It's consuming. So consuming things improperly is just based on impulse. It's based on impulse. It's like I want the thing because I want to consume the thing, right? It's like a fire. It's like a fire, meaning the person is relating to food in the same way that a fire relates to the house that it's burning. Why it's burning? Because this is what I do. Right? Fires burn things down to the ground. That's what I do. So I eat and I consume, and that's just what it is.
It's the same thing with knowledge. Like we're talking about vishinantam, right? When you learn Torah, you're supposed to kind of digest. You're supposed to chew it.
Yes.
So there could be a negative effect when it comes to shame, when it comes to knowledge as well.
For sure, there is a negative. I mean, Chazal openly talk about negative applications of Torah. Chazal say that it's brought in the Gemara that right. I mean, there's two. So this is also something we talked about yesterday about the Torah lishma, not lishma. Right. The Gemara says there's two types of not lishma. The one not lishma, the kind of okay but not ideal form of lishma is right as the Gemara says kadeshi kruli Rabbi, that the person wants kavod, the person wants status. That's not the best kavana, but it's not ideal. Lishma is a very high level, which means that it's not so. I mean, it's attainable by anyone, but saying lishma means that you're learning Torah for its own sake, because this is good to know. These things are good for a person to know. So, period. Why is it good? Okay, there's many reasons why it's good to know, but Torah is a good thing for people to know. So, right. So that's one type of not lishma. Then the bad form of not lishma, which the Gemara says very 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 strong language. It says kol halomei Torah shelo lishma mutav shahayav mishapich shel yaso al panav. It was better, which is basically saying it would be better if he was never born.
It's
very So Tosfos over there explains the distinction. He says that not lishma is for nefarious reasons. Meaning a person wants to manipulate the Torah for his own personal gain, which is the sod, by the way, of lo sisa shem Hashem elokecha l'shav. Do not take my name in vain. It's not only referring to swearing. Swearing is like a specific action that contains taking God's name in vain, literally. But what it means conceptually is taking the name of Hashem, meaning something that has holiness and people respect, and taking that in vain or for your own purposes, which is the same thing, right? So that's the really bad not lishma.
I'm doing it for cover. How is that not the worst of lishma?
Because you're not hurting anyone by it. You're not doing anything bad. You're just not respecting the Torah as much as it should be respected. In fact, the Rambam says famously in Shmona Prakim, he says that this is not necessarily an all-out negative thing. These are motivations that people who just start learning Torah, this is what they're motivated by. Is like, okay, well, all the kids in my class are doing the Mishnayos contest. I also want to be successful in the Mishnayos contest in the bracha, so I'm gonna learn. And hopefully they don't stay there. Hopefully when they're 30 years old, they're not learning to win in the bracha, right? But they progress in their maturity. But all these are types of consuming Torah, right? Taking the lechem of Torah for not the most ideal purposes. So I want to just share with you something which is incredible, unbelievable, mind-blowing. So get ready for the mind-blowingness. This is in Likutei Moharan in Torah Kuf Chaf Tes. The pasuk in Bamidbar, which we're going to read very soon in Parshas B'Shalach, when the spies come back with the negative reports about the land, it just gets progressively worse as it goes on. It starts off kind of okay, and then it's they say, "Whoa, that's off script," and then it just gets worse and worse. Okay. Yeah. And so, in the end of the thing, they say the following line: "Eretz ocheles yoshveahi." This land consumes its inhabitants, or it eats its inhabitants. That's what it says. Okay, so it says Rav Nachman. This is about the progress of someone finding a Rebbe to learn from, who he's comfortable with, who he can receive wisdom from. So he says, what is the nature of eating? Keshachai ocheles tzomeach kegon asavim. Say you have an animal, so the animal eats grass. Nishapchin ha'asavim l'chai. So the grass becomes part of the animal. When it goes into the digestive tract. And when a human being eats an animal, the animal becomes part of the human being. That food will go and be divided, so to speak, amongst all the limbs of the person who consumes it. It becomes that limb, meaning part of the life force of the hamburger that you ate. Part of it will go to your arm, part of it will go to your head, part of it will go to your knees, etc. Okay. He says this is what it means. Right? This was the subconscious, so to speak, intent of the Meraglim. And when they said Eretz Ocheles Yoshveh, they said it in a negative context. Like people that come here, they're consumed in the same way that a fire consumes a house. But really, there's a deep secret there. Eretz Ocheles Yoshveh Kol HaYoshev Be'eretz Yisrael Shoy B'lo Avon, as it says in the Gemara in Ksubas. Anyone who dwells in the land of Israel is free from sin. It's an incredible statement, right? Because there's plenty of wicked people in the Tanakh that lived in Eretz Yisrael. Seemingly didn't work for them. But it says there is a component of living in the land of Israel that it cleanses a person. It cleanses a person, makes them free from sin. So how is that? He said, Ki Eretz Ocheles Yoshveh, because the land consumes its inhabitants. Shehayoshev Sham Nechal Etzla. It's eaten by the land. In the same way that the hamburger becomes part of my body, I become part of the land. I'm being eaten by the land. I want to be eaten by the land. B'nishapech l'mahusa. I become like its essence. Right? That's another quote from Chazal in the Sifri, if I'm not mistaken. Anyone who even walks 4 cubits in the land of Israel, it is guaranteed that he's of the world to come. This is also alluded to in the pasuk that my enemies come, they try to consume my flesh. Right, the consuming. Right, there's negative consuming, which is my enemies trying to consume me. But there's also the consuming my flesh in the sense that I'm being consumed by a higher ideal. I want to become part of that higher ideal. This idea, which you could say is kind of like a play on the words, right, a little bit, because clearly the Meraglim meant it in a negative way. Right? But it's a beferish pasuk in Sefer Vayikra. It's an explicit verse in Parshas Vayikra. Where's the verse? We read it a few weeks ago. V'lo taki haaretz eschem. The land will not what? What does the word taki mean? It doesn't mean spit you out. What does it mean? Vomit. The land will not vomit. If you conduct yourself in the way of the Canaanites, the land will vomit you out. What is that even? What is that mushal? Just say you're going to be exiled. What is this vomit, throwing up? Because that's what's happening. The land ate you. And if you don't agree with it, if it doesn't agree with it, right? If you don't agree with the land, so to speak, if it's it's like food poisoning. It's going to vomit you out, right?
The person, going the wrong direction. Huh? The land is consuming everybody. So why would you lose your sin? It's like you're being consumed into the land. Maybe the land is getting all this food. Some is good, some is bad.
Right.
So now the land has to deal with that, and it's contestants. But
so obviously, when the Gemara says that a person who dwells in the land of Israel is without sin, it's not a magic get out of jail free card. Obviously not, because as we said, there are many, many wicked people. In fact, basically all the wicked people in Tanakh all lived in the land of Israel. So it's not a magical incantation. I live in the land, now I'm free from sin. What it's saying is that there is a quality of the land that purifies a person's soul, and a person, if he chooses, they can access that. Obviously, the person can't live a free for all lifestyle, as the pasuk itself says. Right, the land will vomit you out eventually. Eventually, the land will vomit you out, right? But if a person chooses to orient themselves to the nature, to the mahus, as Rabbi Nachman says, to the essence of the land, that experience is purifying because you become like the essence of the land.
You can sense the purification if you're sensitive enough to it. Like one could sense Shabbos, Kodesh, if they're sensitive enough to the actual fact that it's morphing into Shabbos. One can be sensitive to the fact that you're becoming cleansing from the land. If you choose to work on that aspect, right? what I'm trying to.
I would dovetail this Torah to the Maimer of Chazal in Maseches Brachos on Daf Chesed, if I'm not mistaken. It says that there's a Maimer of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai that there are 3 gifts that God gave to Jewish people that are all acquired through hardship, through Yisurim: Torah, Olam Haba, and Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is acquired through hardship, meaning at the most simple level. What that means is that there's a level of commitment that's required. Like when they put you through boot camp, it's like they intentionally drive you crazy. It's not like, oh, it's difficult. No, they find ways of driving you crazy. Why? Because they want to build your ability to be committed to something, right? It's like the biochemistry in order to get into medical school, right? What does that have to do with medical school? Nothing. They just want to see if people can survive the torture of biochemistry, and then those people who are really committed, they make it in, right? So it's something like that. A person who shows their commitment to the land, they're able to access all the segulos of the land.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm still having a logic problem. If you said to me, if you eat the fruit of Eretz Yisrael, you're consuming the land, and then that could make you better. But if the land is consuming you, so how is that going to help your moral development? You're being chewed up and spit out, and you're nothing left of you. You're just food.
So it's viewing it through the lens of, in the same manner that when something is consumed, it takes on the qualities of the thing that is consuming it. Meaning, when you eat an apple, the apple becomes part of you, right? So the apple is no longer so the molecules of the apple are no longer have an apple quality to them. They are now part of the body of the person who consumes them. They've taken on the humanness of the consumer.
Right.
Similarly, when the person is ensconced in the land, so they take on the qualities of the land, and the quality, right, and the inherent qualities of the land is holiness, connectedness to the divine.
Even though the land is consuming me, you're saying it's going in both directions. I'm also drawing from the land somehow.
The consuming of the fruits of the land is another thing. That's another point, which is also worth thinking about. But this is talking about the other direction of the land consuming you. And again, I think that this is just it's like alluded to very, very strongly, if not outright, in this pasuk in Sefer Vayikra and right in Parshas Acharamos. It says that being unworthy for the land is called being vomited out of the land. Yeah. There's in Chelek Aleph Kuf Chav Tes 129. I just want to end off with one last mimer of Chazal, just to bring this all home, because the takeaway from this is as we said before, the attitude and the approach that we have to all consuming everything, whether that's food or, as Daniel said, Torah, we consume these things. We consume the things that we engage with. So the proper approach, right, of consuming, the shein of kedusha, as Kook would say perhaps, is consuming through the idea that there's chiyus here, there's a divine life force that I need to access in order to do good things with it. So the Gemara in Chulan on Daf Pei Daler, excuse me, says the following. It quotes the pasuk from Tehillim in Tehillim Kuf Yud Beis. Tov ish chonenu malveh. Right, the good man, he is gracious with all that he has, and he loans out his resources when he has the ability to. Yichalkel dvarav b'mishpat. He will be sustained with the proper measure. That's what the pasuk in Tehillim says. So it says the Gemara. We learn from this. Liolam yochal adam v'ishteh pachos mimashe yeshlo. A person should always consume. He should eat and drink less than would be his socioeconomic position. He should always curb back on his own consumption. But he should dress and present himself in public in accordance with his socioeconomic state. And you shouldn't dress intentionally lower, like some lower status.
So that means you should be driving a car also to your status.
That's an interesting point. It seems to be saying that externally a person should express themselves. It should match up, right? V'yichabed ishto ubanav yoser mima sheyesh lo. And he should provide for the members of his household more than his means. He should invest in them more. He should cut back on his own things in order to give his family members more. Shehein tluyin bo, because they are dependent on him. Vehu taloi, and he is dependent b'mi she'amar v'haya ha'olam, on the one that declared the world into existence. Meaning, this is the spiritual food chain. This is not right. The material food chain is that the apex predator who eats everything. right? The spiritual food chain is hafuch. It's the exact opposite. Is that you want to be a sustainer of everything. You want to be at the top of the pyramid of sustaining. You want to be sustaining as much as you can. And at the top of the pyramid, who are you facing? You're facing Misha Amar B'Ha'olam, the one who spoke existence into being. You're being provided by him, and you're able to provide to everyone else. Right? That is the quintessential expression of this shein of kedusha, of the consuming of holiness. Everything that I consume is because there's chiyus there that I need in order to be able to do the things I need to do. Right? The shein, right? The shein, the holy tooth, the holy digestion is through this, right? That you have the attitude that I am totally on you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm dependent on you. You need to give me what I need because I need to access the chiyus so I can do all the things I need to do so I can provide for all the people that are dependent. That's right, Hashem.
We're running out of letters. We only got one letter, so we're supposed to be getting higher. We originally called this levels of consciousness. So we're getting pretty much near the end of our levels of consciousness. And I understand.
Yep, that's it. Once we get the test, that's it. There's no more ascending from there. That's it. I'm sorry. You're going to be at that plateau forever.
So I understand this. I understand this idea of consuming things that make you grow, and that's pretty sophisticated. That's progress from where maybe we started. But why does it also have to have the element of destroying the shame? Because you're saying that the shame can.
It's not that it doesn't have. I don't think it does. It's not that it has to in the way that you're saying. It's saying that this force that exists in the world has a positive manifestation and a negative manifestation. Right? Obviously, as we're progressing, we want to hold on. We want to latch on to the positive manifestation. But at the same time, and Rav Kook has already said this many times with other letters, that the force exists as an independent force that the human being can decide where they want to take it. Right? I would add that specifically regarding this, we see that there were people in history that they progressed to a certain stage. They achieved this, let's say, this level of like the consuming, the one who can access all the chiyos, who can access all the wealth. But when they got to that point, they deviated. Right? I think Shlomo Melech is a very good example of that. Right? He was chosen by God. He was given the name Yedidya, right? God's beloved one, and like he's the guy who's going to build the temple, right? But then when he achieved this high status, his wealth ended up corrupting him, right? So it's not like progressing up the ladder doesn't mean that we're just on a steady direction up. When we inherit or acquire rather these levels, it still presents the potential for falling at that level.
Is that because you need that test built in? In other words, you can't get some force that can do tremendous good without being tested that it could go the other way too.
The nature of reality is that all forces in the world are parav, so to speak, right? They're neutral from a moral perspective, and it's the human being that determines the moral determination of the thing. Right? Zelu maseh also Elohim, right? As the pasuk in Kohelet says, right? God created this and that equal to each other. The potentiality for negative action, potentiality for positive action is equal, and it's all dependent on how the person chooses to apply it. So,